Welcome to day 2 of the 12 Days of Celtic Mythology, Series 2. In the coming days, I'll be telling the story of Culhwch and Olwen, and we'll use that story as a springboard for talking about different facets of Celtic mythology. You can find yesterday's video on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, be sure to check it out. Whether you're in the live class or watching later, you need to go to the YouTube video each day if you want to look at the list of references. And that includes a link to a website where you can read the whole story. So let's get started. When we left our story yesterday, our young hero, Culhwch, had set out on the first part of his adventure. Fated by his stepmother's words to love no woman but Olwen, a giant's daughter, he took his father's advice to seek the help of his cousin, King Arthur, in obtaining her. So he put on his finest clothes and took up his beautifully crafted weapons, mounted his fabulous steed, and with his hunting dogs at his feet, he made for Arthur's court. However, when he arrived, the gatekeeper wasn't keen to let him in. "Why will you not open the door?" demanded Culhwch. "The feast is already underway," said the voice behind the door. "Protocol demands that only a king's son or the finest craftsman may ever be allowed to disrupt the feasting with an untimely arrival. However, you will be treated hospitably in the nearby hostel maintained by Arthur. There you will get meat for your dogs, grain for your horses, and all the pepper chops and fine wine you want for yourself. There will be fine songs to entertain you, and a woman to warm your bed. Tomorrow you will be made welcome in Arthur's court, and you may choose any seat in his hall." "That will not do at all," returned Culhwch. "Unless you let me in now, you will regret it. For I will bring infamy and ill repute on your head and on your Lord Arthur. I will give 3 shouts that will be heard from Ireland to Cornwall, shouts so frightful that any pregnant woman who hear it will miscarry, and the rest will become barren." Geiriadur replied, "Your shouting will do you no good. I cannot let you in unless I speak to Arthur first." Geiriadur left the gate and approached Arthur, who asked him his errand. "2/3 of my life have passed in your service, and 2/3 of your own have also passed. I was there in Caer Say and Asay, in Sach and Salach, in Lotor and Vortor. I was with you in Greater and Lesser India, and in the battle of the 2 Inners, when 12 hostages were taken from Lachlan. I have served you in Europe, in Africa, in Greece and Corsica. I was with you in Caer Oeth and Caer Anoeth, in Caer Nevinhir. Fair princes have I seen in these lands, but I have never seen a man so fine and noble as he who is at your gate this very minute. Do not leave him out there in the wind and the rain. You walked in here to tell me this, but you'd better run back and let him in before I have time to blink. Servants, fetch this man a golden drinking horn and a plate of chops." Kai, of course, complained that this was a breach of protocol and said that the lad should wait like everyone else, but Arthur overruled him. Geiriadur rushed to the gate to admit Culhwch, but rather than dismount and enter in the customary way, Culhwch rode straight into the feasting hall, where he greeted Arthur with most courteous and respectful praise and blessings. Arthur returned these courtesies. He invited Culhwch to take whatever seat he preferred. "You are welcome to the privileges of a prince in my court," said Arthur, "and all food and drink and entertainment, whatever you need, I will put at your disposal." But Culhwch replied, "I didn't come here to eat and drink, but I ask you to grant me a favor, and if you say no, I will spread your dishonor far and wide." "I swear to you," said Arthur, "that I will grant you whatever you ask, as long as you do not ask for my ship, my cloak, my personal weapons, nor my wife." "Then I ask you to trim my hair," said Culhwch. "That I will gladly do," said Arthur, and he had a gold comb and a pair of shears with silver loops brought to him, and he began to comb Culhwch's hair. My heart warms to you, said Arthur to Kilhuch. I know that we are kin. Tell me who you are. I am Kilhuch, son of Kilith, son of Calithan Wledig. My mother is Goleithith, daughter of Anlaud Wledig. Well, kinsman, said Arthur, name whatever you will, and it is yours. Do you swear by your kingdom that it is so? Asked Kilhuch. I gladly swear it, said Arthur. The gift I ask is that you obtain me Olwen, daughter of Ysbyddaden, chief giant, and I invoke it in the name of your warriors. Well, Kilhuch seems to be making progress. He's got King Arthur firmly on his side, and it's just day 2. What could possibly go wrong? There are 1 or 2 details in what I just told you that are worth going back and taking a look at. So let's do that. So both yesterday and today, we can see that a lot of importance is laid on Kilhuch's exchange with the gatekeeper. This is echoed in the poem about Arthur that we looked at yesterday too. Another story that I'll be referring to a few times in this series is the Irish story called The Second Battle of Moytuired. You might be familiar with the scene from that story where the young god Lugh is at the gates of Tara trying to gain entry. Nuada was once more in the kingship over the Tuired, and at that time he held a great feast for the Tuired in Tara. Now, there was a certain warrior whose name was Savildonach on the way to Tara. A handsome, well-built young warrior with a king's diadem was at the front of the band. The doorkeeper asked who was there. Lugh Lorvansklich, he is here, the son of Cian, the son of Diencacht, the son of Enyed, the daughter of Balor. He is the foster son of Taltu, the daughter of Maimor, the king of Spain, and of Achigar of Macduach. The doorkeeper then asks Savildonach, what art do you practice? For no one without an art enters Tara. Question me, he said. I am a builder. The doorkeeper answered, we do not need you. We have a builder already. Luchta Macluchda. He said, question me, doorkeeper. I am a smith. The doorkeeper answered him, we have a smith already. Call him Kulnyenyak, the 3 new techniques. He said, question me. I am a champion. So like Kilhuch, the gatekeeper tells him that one criteria for entry is possessing some important skills. In Lugh's case, he lists his many skills one by one, only to be told each time that there's already someone in the court who's an expert. Finally, Lugh asks the gatekeeper whether there's anyone who possesses all the skills he's listed. He said, ask the king, has he one man who possesses all these arts? If he has, I will not be able to enter Tara. Then the doorkeeper went to the royal hall and told everything to the king. A warrior has come before the court, he said, named Savildonach, and all the arts which help your people. He practices them all, so that he is the man of each and every art. That was related to Nuada. Let him come into the court, said Nuada, for a man like that has never before come into this fortress. Then the doorkeeper let him past, and he went into the fortress, and he sat in the seat of the sage, because he was a sage in every art. Of course, many Arthurian stories begin with something which happens at a feast, like this passage from Owain. The Emperor Arthur was at Cartheon, or Wisk. He was sitting one day in his chamber, and with him Owain, son of Irian, and Cunan, son of Clydno, and Kai, son of Cynner, and Gwenhwyvar and her maidens sewing at a window. Glewlwyd Gawailvar was there in the role of gatekeeper. Then Arthur said, men, as long as you do not make fun of me, I should like to sleep while I wait for my food, and you can tell each other stories. That's an interesting portrayal of Arthur, don't you think? And an interesting way to begin a tale. Sometimes there's an important scene at a feast near the beginning where something happens to set the story in motion, like this episode near the beginning of Geiriadur. So Geiriadur has met Owain and some other knights and has decided to try and become a knight too, so he follows them. Geiriadur continued his journey to Arthur's court. And before he arrived at Arthur's court, another knight came to the court. He proceeded into the hall where Arthur and his retinue were, and Gwenhwyvar and her maidens and a chamberlain serving Gwenhwyvar from a goblet. And the knight grabbed the goblet from Gwenhwyvar and and poured the drink that was in it over her face and breast, and gave Gwenhwyvar a great clout on the ear. "If there is anyone," he said, "who wants to fight with me for this goblet and avenge this insult to Gwenhwyvar, let him follow me to the meadow, and I'll wait for him there." Peredur comes into the hall on a bony dapple-grey nag and its untidy, slovenly trappings, and Kai is standing in the middle of the hall floor. "Tell me, you tall man over there," said Peredur, "where is Arthur?" "What do you want with Arthur?" said Kai. "My mother told me to come to Arthur to be ordained a knight." "By my faith," said Kai, "your horse and weapons are too untidy." Then the retinue notices him, and they begin to make fun of him and throw sticks at him, and they're glad that someone like him has arrived so that the other incident can be forgotten. Now, this is followed by a bit of an altercation with a dwarf, and Peredur is goaded into going to the meadow to fight this rude knight. Peredur, though, he's just a green youth at this stage. He doesn't even have proper equipment. "God knows," said Owain, son of Irian, to Kai, "you behaved badly toward that foolish man you sent after the knight, and one of two things has happened. Either he has been overthrown or killed. If he has been overthrown, that knight will consider him a nobleman, and Arthur and his warriors will be eternally disgraced. If he's been killed, they will still be disgraced, but more than that, it will have been your fault, and I will lose face unless I go and find out what has happened to him." And so the story of Peredur goes on from there with many adventures. The midwinter feast seems to be a favorite for this kind of scene. Note that Culhwch's entrance is on the 1st of January. Glewlwyd says that he's only the gatekeeper on the 1st of January. Of course, there's another famous scene in Arthurian literature which features an unexpected visitor at the midwinter feast. That's the tale of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which opens with a lavish description of Arthur's feasting hall at Christmas. Everyone is jolly and tucking into the food when the strange Green Knight rides his horse into the hall. It was Christmas at Camelot, King Arthur's court, where the great and the good of the land had gathered, all the righteous lords of the ranks of the Round Table, quite properly carousing and reveling in pleasure. Good Sir Gawain is seated by Guinevere, and at Arthur's other side sits Agravain, the hard hand, both nephews of the king and notable knights. At the head sat Bishop Baldwin as Arthur's guest of honor, and Ivain, son of Irian, to eat beside him. And with starters just spooned to the seated guests, a fearful form appeared, framed in the door, a mountain of a man immeasurably high. Amazement seized their minds. No soul had ever seen a knight of such kind, entirely emerald green. And the horse, every hair was green, from hoof to mane. So in all these Arthurian stories, Arthur is portrayed as still great, but he seems to be past his prime a little. He comes across as more of a sleepy old uncle than a battle-ready hero. And I wonder whether this says something about how the Welsh perceived Arthur. It's also interesting to note how often Owain is mentioned in these scenes. While we might not be 100% sure who the historical Arthur was, we know that Owain was the son of a great Dark Age king from North Britain called Irian of Rheged. So Irian lived a generation or two after Arthur, so Owain and Arthur could never have met in real life if Arthur was historical. But he's among a number of northern heroes who were drafted into Arthurian stories later as important characters. The death of Irian, Owain's father, was considered a major factor in the Brythonic North falling to the incoming Germanic Angles, and he was greatly mourned. Perhaps that's why the Welsh never co-opted him, that is Irian, into the Arthurian stories. Maybe it would have felt a bit sacrilegious to do so. But his son Owain turns up as a character in lots of interesting places, in spite of the fact that his father probably actually outlived him in real life. I'll be devoting a whole week to the many stories about Owain in my upcoming class about the Old North. We'll also look at Geiriadur and many others. The parallel between Culhwch, a young hero, and the Green Knight, a magical foe, riding their horses straight into the feasting hall is an interesting one. It makes for dramatic storytelling, but it also speaks of a certain disrespect for Arthur and his court. That's more understandable in the case of the antagonistic Green Knight, but Culhwch's attitude isn't much better. His repeated threats to satirize Arthur and ruin his reputation are surprising, considering that Arthur is a powerful relation for whom Culhwch's seeking help. In both cases, Arthur seems almost impossible to offend, or put another way, he doesn't bother to defend his honor. Those of you who've read Culhwch before know what comes after today's scene. We're faced with what Jenna Tilendrew calls the wall of text, because when Culhwch invokes Arthur's warriors, it takes him over 2,000 words to list them all. Remember that I mentioned that our storytelling scribe was a bit of a hoarder. Well, we're about to take a fearless dive into the depths of his unfathomable collection of lore. So tomorrow, the story stops, and for 3 days, we're going to go poking through the cupboards and attics and cellars of Welsh lore. We certainly won't be looking at everyone on the list. We couldn't do that in 12 days. While a lot of information has been lost over the centuries, most of these guys on this immense long court list still have tatters of story clinging to them, like a scarecrow's jacket. For those of you who may be feeling frustrated that you're going to have to wait to find out what happens to Culhwch, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of the tale. I'll try not to hand out too many spoilers. Believe me, I can't tell you the whole story. There'll be plenty of surprises to come. But if you're new to the story, I think a map of the territory can be kind of helpful. If you'd like to delve a little deeper into the topics in my videos, you might enjoy taking one of my online classes. You can find out more about them at the link which is on your screen now. You can also support my work on Ko-fi or by becoming a patron. You'll also find free content to read on my Patreon page and on my website. All the links are in the description. So Culhwch and Olwen isn't a very linear story. It's really many stories, some of them embedded in still more stories like Russian dolls. Culhwch's quest to win Olwen provides a framework. Some readers get very frustrated trying to make sense of it all because of all the side quests and side quests, not to mention all those unfamiliar Welsh names. It can be a bit psychedelic at times, and it's easy to become disoriented. Your first time through the maze is almost an initiatory experience. So what I'm about to share is just a rough map scrawled on the back of an envelope. So we're at the point in the story where Arthur has agreed to help Culhwch, but he doesn't have much success at first, in spite of his hundreds of warriors being invoked. In the end, it's a small group of heroes who decide to set out on the quest for Olwen. So this group is made up of Kai, Bedwyr, Cynddellig, Gwalchmai, Gwyrddur, and Menw. I know that you guys struggle with all this Welsh, so I'm just going to point at those and say them in the privacy of your own home. Feel free to say them after me. We have Kai, Bedwyr, Cynddellig, Gwyrddur, Gwalchmai, and Menw. So each of them has their own set of supernatural powers which will aid the quest. For example, Gwyrddur is a master of every language and can even converse with animals, while Menw can render everybody invisible. This group sets out with Culhwch, and soon they get close to Olwen's home. Culhwch and Olwen briefly meet, and the party add another man to their company, who's also Culhwch's cousin. In fact, if you keep tabs, you'll notice that an awful lot of people in this story are related. Culhwch and Arthur seem to have an endless supply of cousins and uncles. Finally, Culhwch meets Ysbyddaden, the giant, father of Olwen, face to face. This doesn't go all that well, but he does agree to let Culhwch marry Olwen if he can do a few troublesome jobs for him first. And this is where we discover that our mad hoarder of a storyteller, the one whose cellar, attic, and cupboards we plan to examine, has an attached garage and a garden shed he's been concealing from us. That's right, it's another list. Of course, the jobs that Culhwch is supposed to do are just a trick. Ysbyddaden says, of course you can marry Olwen as long as you cross everything off my to-do list for the wedding. The tasks are mostly magical and mostly impossible. They involve an assortment of monsters, giants, witches. An awful lot of them have to do with Ysbyddaden needing a good shave and a haircut before the wedding. And this is where it gets really weird. In order to barber Ysbyddaden, 2 fearsome wild boars have to be hunted and killed. The first one won't be any picnic, but the second boar, called the Tuired, comes with its own massive list of side quests. Magical huntsmen and magical hunting kit and hunting dogs, which must be assembled before they will stand a chance to catch it. One of the huntsmen they need is Mabinogion, and he turns out to be especially hard to locate. He's been missing for so long that whole epochs of history have passed since anyone saw him. In fact, searching for him is one of the biggest side quests of the story. And by the time that search is over, I suspect readers who've made it that far may be wondering whether they're still reading the same story. Eventually, the boar hunt gets underway. And as you've probably guessed, it isn't smooth sailing. And there are still a bunch of other side quests to deal with. So I don't want to give you too many more spoilers. But I promise you, it's a very good story. But I'll see you tomorrow. Bring a light and maybe some spider repellent because we'll begin exploring the attic and the cellar. And before you go, here's today's questions. I thought there was only going to be one, but in fact, there's going to be 2 because I thought of another one while I was talking. So first of all, what do you make of Arthur so far in the light of not only what's happened in our story, but the texts we looked at yesterday and today? What do you make of Arthur so far? Do you see greatness there? We're going to be discussing this in the live class, but if you're watching on YouTube, I'll be looking at your answers in the comments. Now, the other question I have for you is, what do you make of Culhwch's attitude when he rocks up at Arthur's court? So yesterday we saw how beautiful and heroic he looked and, very well dressed, nice horse, nice dogs. But he's got a particular approach to this thing, which seems a little surprising to me. So I wonder what you make of that too. So what do you make of Arthur? Is he the great hero from the movies, or is he something a little different? And what do you make of Culhwch? Why is he so, he seems a little antagonistic, a little edgy, doesn't he? So there are no right or wrong answers, by the way. It's just something which might be worth thinking about. How does Arthur look to you based on the texts we've looked at? And how does Culhwch seem to you as a person? So we'll leave it there for today. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow.